Hi, my name's Julian Hughes-John, and welcome to Gang Relations.
It's time for something else too. A concerted, all-out war on gangs and gang culture. This isn't some side issue. It is a major criminal disease that has infected streets and estates across our country. Stamping out these gangs should be a new national priority.
Don't believe the hype. Don't believe it. Don't put no faith or trust in it, because it will come back and bite you.
There's two things that happen in life that are sure. One is death, and the next is prison. So it's whichever one they want, isn't it?
From a very young age, I've always had a large number of friends. I grew up in the 90s, and some of my friends who I had around that time became closer to me than my own brothers. I would say back then we would class ourselves as a crew, and it remained that way up until 2001, when I was sent to prison. However, after being released from prison in 2006, I saw a rise in gangs and what I perceived as gang culture. I was fascinated how one road or street could separate feuding groups of people. As I got to know this was just merely friends hanging around and clearly media manipulation, it prompted me to find out more. I used to watch a lot of TV footage on the news, and I would see different groups of people acting in basically the same way, but people were never referred to as being part of a gang. The media would only use the word when it was associated with groups of people from certain backgrounds and culture. So I decided to make a short documentary to educate the people on what the word gang really means, and basically to show that unless you are a loner and you have no friends, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, everyone is a gang member. The word gang originally comes from the word gong. Gong, meaning journey, was used to refer to a gong of sailors in the 15th century. However, the term was changed over time, and now the word gang has been adopted worldwide. Today, the word gang has many meanings. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, gang means an organised group of people who engage in criminality or rowdy behaviour. Informal meaning, a group of people who regularly associate together. An organised group of people doing manual work. However, we all know that the word is so closely associated with socially deprived urban groups of friends and can be tagged to individuals purely on the basis that they are in a group of two or more. There you have it, the true terminology of the word gang. Now let me tell you a little bit about the history of how gangs were formed, how they came about, and how many different types of gangs exist today. After the 15th century, there were 4 kinds of gangs, which were formed into the gangs we know today. 1. The secret societies. 2. Gangs of outlaws in the Wild West. 3. Racist gangs like the Ku Klux Klan. 4. Voting gangs, tied mainly to the Democratic Party in large cities. This formed the basis of what we call gangs today. We can conclude that gangs then and now roughly fall into 4 categories. 1. There are gangs of oppressed groups which form because of lack of opportunity and often take it by outlaw means, Western outlaws, original mafia. 2. There are gangs which are used by dominant or rising groups to enforce their power by violence or terror, the KKK, voting gangs, some triads and the mafia. 3. There were gangs that lasted only a short time, usually until the leader is killed or grows up, the James Gang. And 4, those gangs which persist for decades and sometimes longer, triads, mafioso, the KKK, Crips and Bloods, These gangs are said to have institutionalized or taken permanent form. Moving forward to the present day, many people have tried to discover the true meaning of the word gang, the government and police alike. But for many Britons, a gang means a group of teenagers involved in petty crime, or graduating to selling drugs, stealing mobile phones, or even stabbing other young people from rival postcodes.
Look mate, I'm a boss in this thing, brick peas for the jewels, yeah, I floss with the bling. I drop drawers with the bling, check the left and the heights. If I come back with a bang, I bang at the back.
Although many people would disagree with the public perception and the media portrayal of gangs, the stereotype does exist. However, those individuals are doing nothing to take that stereotype away, and these music videos are doing nothing to help them. They only have themselves to blame.
Still bragging about the black gang I'm in. I come with the gym bag like I come for gym, but I ain't come.
Floorboards, A-class in the ceiling. A mean pack of soldiers that will march where the beef is. Hogwarts stick, make you fly, call him Harry P. ITV hustle movies, Channel 3, mask on, knocking at your door like it's Halloween. Mike Myers mind frame, peel him like a tangerine.
Although most of them Brits will have little or no direct experience of gangs, but they are still frightened and fascinated by them in equal measures. The majorities were happy that they were committing crimes against themselves, and they felt widely insulated from it until the riots in 2011. In the wake of the August riots, Prime Minister David Cameron promised to wage an all-out war against gangs. The word gang became a catch-all word.
I've come straight from a meeting of the government's COBRA committee for dealing with emergencies, where we've been discussing the action that we will be taking to help the police to deal with the disorder on the streets of London and elsewhere in our country. I've also met with the Metropolitan Police Commissioner and the Home Secretary to discuss this further. And people should be in no doubt that we will do everything necessary to restore order to Britain's streets and to make them safe for the law-abiding. Let me first of all completely condemn the scenes that we have seen on our television screens and people have witnessed in their communities. These are sickening scenes, scenes of people looting, vandalising, thieving, robbing, scenes of people attacking police officers and even attacking fire crews as they're trying to put out fires. This is criminality, pure and simple, and it has to be confronted and defeated.
One study for the Home Office found that up to 60% of 10 to 19-year-olds belong to a gang in England and Wales. In 2008, Strathclyde Police estimated that there were 170 gangs in Glasgow, with 3,500 gang members aged from 11 to 23. The previous year, the Met Police in London said that there were 171 known gangs in London. In the London borough of Waltham Forest alone, it is estimated that 600 to 700 people are members of different gangs. It is documented that at least half of the 26 teenage murders in London during 2007 were gang-related. Officers in Liverpool and Manchester have said in the past that 60% of shootings are linked to gangs. John Heel, author of One Blood, a study of British street gangs, defines gangs as such. It is a group of about 10 or more individuals who have a name and would claim an allegiance to a geographical area, but the reality is, it's a lot more messy. Chief Superintendent Nick Epgrave, who works in the Borough of Lambeth in London, says that there are similarities between UK and US gangs. I quote, "The culture accompanying these groups is transatlantic. The clothing and music, the attitude to life, and the words that are used all come from American gang culture." But is the problem getting worse? This is not just happening in major cities. Over the years, there's been a rise in gang culture in mostly all the cities and towns in Great Britain. Nowhere less than my own hometown.
The murder of a man shot dead in the street. He was found with serious head injuries lying on the pavement in Haymarket Road in Luton.
Yeah.
Heard these niggas talk swag a lot, soccer on a team, nigga, I don't really brag a lot.
Now, on the surface, it certainly does look calm and peaceful. However, it has become a hotbed for gun and knife crimes, with over 3 fatalities over the past 7 months.
But the biggest challenge facing police is finding witnesses prepared to give statements. Many are either too scared or are themselves involved in criminal activity. Last month, Paul Foster was shot dead in Luton. Potential witnesses are staying away from police. All these attacks are leaving a legacy of sorrow in many families. 11 gang-related arrests so far in Bedfordshire and 2 guns seized. But police say they need more public support to help them bring the criminals to justice. Sally Chidzoy, BBC Look East, Luton.
Yeah, I'm rolling with my dog like that nigga Stimpy. Yeah, bust case, some niggas didn't, some niggas gone.
They carry submachine guns as they patrol 2 estates in Luton. Armed police reclaiming the streets from armed gang members who brought fear to the town. Shootings here have escalated in recent weeks. The most recent shooting was last weekend when a 16-year-old boy was shot in the back on Marsh Farm Estate. The gunman remains free.
And when you heard that a young 16-year-old lad had been shot, what went through your mind? Were you surprised?
Not really. Not with this town, anyway.
Part of an operation focused on closing in on the gang members who think nothing of using guns and knives to settle scores.
You niggas are soft, you niggas are flaccid. Mac 11 bar, let them niggas have it. I'm repping the farm where them greasy niggas be jamming.
This is Brunel Road, where Paul Foster was shot in the chest in full view of the street as he left the house at just before midnight on Tuesday last week.
Talk about how I'm mashing, flipping, yeah, yo, and dirty. All of my niggas, yeah, we trapping. 24/7, hitting the ground, we never slacking. Free my younger Charlie coppers, we're happy to catch him. I'm just trying to get 3 wishes granted like Aladdin. First, free my nigga Nizzy, car they made him vanish. Secondly, give me brass and riches under my mattress.
There was another shooting today on the other side of Luton. No one was hurt, and the police say they're not linking the 2 incidents. More violence, though, in a residential part of the town will make residents more uneasy. It's exactly what the police don't need when they're trying to get people to talk.
Big metal arms like jacks when I come around, nigga, it's alarm for your back. I'm the calmest, but doggy regardless, I ain't trying to tell calm and relax. Before it's time to get real again, grab the 38 and make it real again. Make a pussy drop on the scene again. If them not get hear them, I feel again. Young man, no way to put the heat on them.
You would call them a gang as well, but they're looking out for each other, for themselves as well. So if they were to see us, or one of us, they're gonna do probably the same thing we're gonna do to them when we see them.
A lot of people, it's not long before this happens. It's going to happen because the kids are running around in the world, you know, and no one ain't them. At the end of the day, if no one's not going to step up to the plate and help them, what do they expect to happen?
With this recent violence on my local streets, it is shocking how things can change so quickly. Kids are killing kids, and innocent people are getting caught in the crossfire. I'm sure that most people are familiar with these happenings, and most people have children walking in the same streets. Something has to be done to address this. It won't be long before someone close to you is either hurt or killed on your local streets. It's got to stop. Before we go to a break, I'll leave you with a few clips of people who could quite easily be classed as being a gang member. Apart from the clothing, background and colour, you tell me if you can spot the difference. Welcome back to part 2. Now let's go to an interview I had with someone who is a confessed former gang member and has been tagged as a gang member for over a decade and can't seem to shake that tag off. Something he so desperately wants to do. Pleasure to meet you, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to attend and participate in this documentary.
So I've spoken to you a little bit about the sort of things that I'm trying to achieve and basically just a little history about what my documentary is about. I'd just like to ask you a few questions and just give me your honest, open answer as much as you can. So firstly, if I was to ask you what the word gang meant, what would your answer be?
The word gang, and what I understand it to be, is it's a terminology that's used in it.
Okay.
In a negative way.
If you was to give that terminology of what maybe the public perceive the word gang to be, then what would your answer be then?
Basically, it's highly negative with regards to the public, and if anything is mentioned or anything surrounding the word gang is brought to any form of sort of table, then it's highlighted in a negative way in it, and people assume it's shootings, firearms offences, people dealing in drugs, individuals, teenagers causing nuisances, hoodies. You know, there's a wide range and a big category of people it can affect, whether it be white, black, Russian, Polish, Jamaican.
So would you describe yourself as being part of a gang?
From an outside perspective, and the public and people in authority and certain people who have or may have had dealings with me in a negative light could have alleged that I was a gang member due to my associates, where I come from, where I live. You know, there was a time in my life where I wasn't proactive. There was a time in my life when I wasn't doing constructive things with myself, and you know, I was a gang member. I did participate in certain things like my index offences, what led me to find myself in custody. You know, I was given an 18-year custodial sentence for shootings and firearms offences and other things that would basically come under as gang related, really.
So after spending nearly a decade, nearly 10 years in prison, how do you feel about still being labelled as a gang member?
So yeah, you know, I've made use of my time in custody and whatnot, but even though my past is behind me and I've made them changes, I've used my negative experience as a positive, and I've been long in this process, but there's still a stigma surrounding me, you know, and I'm still portrayed as an active gang member. You know, I can't really shake that title or that label in it, and it is highly negative. It's stopped me from progressing through the prison system. I'm also, every time I am in dealings with anybody in authority, even members of staff, there's always that doubt, as if to whether, you know, is this guy being truthful? Is he sincere? You know what I'm saying? But like I said, I've long been in the process, and what I've found now is that even though I am labelled as a gang member, I was a gang member, I've turned it around, innit?
I mean, if you was to try to attach a word or emotion to how you feel about it, do you feel ashamed? Do you feel disgusted? Do you feel quite embarrassed the fact that you're still being labelled that after 10 years?
Yeah, of course. I'm totally ashamed of what I used to do and what I used to represent.
Okay.
You know, and it will always have a negative impact on me, and it has basically messed up my life, and it will still have a negative impact on my future no matter how hard I try and leave my past behind.
So how do you feel about the word gang today and what it represents? You know, the postcode wars, the designer clothes, I mean, back in the day it wasn't that bad. You know, how do you feel about that now?
I feel sorry for certain individuals who would like to embrace that lifestyle and be a part of something like that. You know, it's like what you just said then, when I was on the roads, should I say, we didn't have postcodes or nothing and this colour or that colour, you know. Like I said, it was just a group of people who have knew each other for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Go to nightclubs with each other, go here, there, you know, play football together, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, as it's from 2000 and upwards from that date, these postcodes and the colour stuff and all this has been brought about and highlighted, but again, you know, it's not something I would want to represent if I was a youngster now. Obviously, they might not see the consequences and be able to see that the cycle and what it will do in the future for them, innit?
So if you look back on things now, what would you say was your first earliest memory of gang involvement, gang rivalry, that sort of thing?
Yeah, that can come about from, you know, just the area you live in and whatnot. And, you know, you talk to a certain set of guys, someone from who you know and you might be associating with on a regular basis might have an argument with a guy from another area or another alleged gang or a certain set of people, and, you know, that's when it can really, things can be started, innit?
I mean, I've spoken to you prior to this interview, and obviously I know you from HMP Whitemoor. You're quite open and honest with yourself, and you've totally accepted and admitted your offence. I understand that you've been involved in shootings, and also as a result of that, you've been shot yourself. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, you know, like I said, I was involved in certain things. I got my custodial sentence through shooting people and indulging in certain little gang activities, you know. I've been injured myself, like you said, you know, I showed you this earlier on. You know, I've been, more or less, to be raw and blunt, I've been behind the door for nearly a decade now, innit? So whatever experience there is to be gained or had, or what one has to go through, I've been through it, innit? And this all has come about through this gang stuff, innit?
So you said that you've stepped away totally from the gang life, which, hats off to you, from your story seems quite something that's quite hard to do. Do you have any messages for anybody who may want to do the same thing, you know, changing their circle of friends, maybe moving area to get away from the influence of the gang culture?
Well, me personally, I've had a lot of time to think and reflect and evaluate my situation. And, you know, I was 22 years of age, I'm now 31, and I have basically done me. I care about myself, innit? And I care about my family. My priorities have changed, and, you know, I've not dissed nobody, I've not distanced myself from nobody. It's just like, you know, people get older, and with me it's been my age. I've been took out of the equation, out of the run of things, and I've just concentrated on bettering myself in it. And like, you know, if there is anybody or any youths or whatnot who kind of find the lifestyle attractive and want to be a part of that, but, you know, even see this documentary and think, well, wait a minute, are these talking some real stuff here? And, you know, the best thing you can do is associate yourself with positive people. You know, it's how you conduct yourself, innit?
Over my years in prison, I've seen many cases of organised crime gangs, drug importation, counterfeit crime gangs, gang rape, child exploitation gangs. How do you feel the fact that the name gang and gang culture only seems to be attached to certain people, but yet if you look at the organisation and the sophistication behind some of these crime gangs, they could be perceived as being more organised and more involved in the gang culture than some of the people who have the label now?
You know, partying, girls, money, cars. There weren't really nothing organised about it, really, you know. If you can put the word gang onto a certain group of people, it can be so easy and it can stick. And it might not even be that. It doesn't really matter, innit? Yeah, well, like I said, through my own personal experience, it has been frustrating for me because, like I said, I'm done. I've put that behind me. You know, I've learned a lot from my past.
Okay. So, moving on in the future, do you have any plans on how you can take something positive from your tag/stroke experience as a gang member, be it informal or formal?
As I mentioned earlier on, I've used my time wisely, and, you know, I've equipped myself with, you know, certain skills and certain qualifications. I've got all the experience that's needed. You know, I just need a chance to come out, put myself around some positive people who will assist me, hopefully the probation. So, you know, I do work with outside organisations in regards to the youth work, and, you know, I've been long doing this youth work thing, and I'm wishing to continue this when I get out, because I know I will have a major impact on certain individuals.
So on that note, is there a positive message that you'd like to give to the viewers to just explain to them on how they could get out of being part of a gang? The fact that it's clearly not worthwhile being part of that. Would you like to leave a message for the viewers?
My advice is do constructive things with your time. Put a lot of effort into positive things. Put yourself and associate yourself with positive people.
Very good.
Always go that little bit extra to gain something, because, you know, life is always full of hurdles and obstacles, but for once it's positive, just keep chipping away in it and you will get there. But, you know, you need to think as well, you know.
Okay.
So yeah, but on the negative side now, you know, all this is fake. It's a load of crap, you know. No, your friends ain't there for you when you really need them, you know. You will learn the hard way, you know, if you don't take heed. But it's all a load of crap. All the music videos, all the money, you know, the easy come, easy go, innit? And it's just like your friends. And if you do choose to involve yourself in certain activities and gangs and whatnot, then you've got another thing coming. You're gonna know about it, because you will end up in prison, or if not, I hope not, but, you know, you could be taken out, innit? You know what I mean? But yeah, don't believe the hype. Don't believe it. Don't put no faith or trust in it, because it will come back and bite you. And hopefully, you know, one day I'd like you to be even doing something positive with yourself. I won't want you to be sitting in my position after hearing what I've said and the advice I've give you and the insight into what's really going on. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much for coming along. Very interesting. Good message you done there.
Once again, I
Appreciate
appreciate
your time.
it.
All the best for the future.
You too.
Let's go to another break. Join me in part 3, where you'll see for yourself what turning your life around is all about. We will hear from people who have been through some major adversities and come out the other end. Someone to look up to as a positive role model. Welcome back to part 3. Coyote Ariran, a former gang member who turned his life around by making music, was a major producer for the now defunct group Big Brothers. Coyote, who was part of the Younger 28 gang which formed in Brixton during the 90s, said he was lucky to escape the gang life and now wants to do something positive for the young people in the area by establishing Great Brixton Football Club. The 34-year-old has gained support from some Premier League footballers, and in a recent interview he told the Voice newspaper that creating a new club was a personal goal of his. Coyote's mum died when he was just 15 years old, and he had a difficult relationship with his dad. He left home and became part of a group. When he first turned his back on the gang culture, he was fortunate to have somebody to teach him how to make music. Now he thinks he should do the same, so he started the Give Back Foundation. Coyote is trying to do a number of charity events and has chosen to skydive to raise money. He aimed to raise over £250,000 to help buy a field in Brixton that would become the home of the football club. He believes that we are all blessed with one talent or the other. The problem is, we are too concerned with making money and we forgot we can give other things. He sends a positive message out to others and is highly respected in his own area. He has gone on to use that in a positive way and do something to better himself, and one day hopes he can change the lives of young people all over the world. In 2012, Chris Preddy, whose cousins were jailed for killing Daminola Taylor in Peckham, was awarded the honour at Buckingham Palace for helping young offenders. The self-confessed former gang member met the Queen to receive an OBE for his outstanding contribution to youth work. The 24-year-old volunteer has worked for the crime-fighting charity Crime Stoppers and has set up his own project, making dreams a reality. Growing up on a council estate in Finsbury Park, Chris Preddy dabbled in selling cannabis and spent time with bad people who robbed victims at knife point. But at 16, his older brother was shot dead in a gang-related incident, and with his mother's encouragement, he turned his life around. Today, Mr. Preddy said he could not have succeeded without his strong, caring mother. Miss John, a foster carer for over 8 years, said seeing her son receiving the prize made her the proudest mother in the world. However, although Chris Preddy says he never knew his cousins, Daminola Taylor's father was totally against the award. Now, you may not feel that you can relate to any of these two people, but if someone can change their life around, so can you. Lastly, let's talk to Ian McLeod, a man who's also been labelled as a gang member, but chooses to use that to his advantage to make change. Ian, pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you.
Thanks for coming today. Appreciate that you want to take part in the documentary. Thanks for taking the time out.
Yeah, it's nice to help them.
If I was to ask you what firstly your perception and then maybe the public's perception of the word gang, what would your answer be?
My perception is obviously just like, you know, youths hanging on a corner or whatever, you know, just mischievous.
Okay.
That's my perception. Publics, guys hanging around with hoodies and big chains or whatever.
So what year would you say was your first experience of being involved in what you would class as a stereotypical gang?
86.
As far back as 86?
1986, yeah.
Okay, okay. And what was your sort of experience? How did it come about, it developing into what now would be classed as a gang?
Well, I used to drink at a pub.
Yeah.
And obviously, you meet people in a pub, socialising, and then obviously you form a friendship with certain people. That's how it come about for me.
Okay, and then leading up to maybe the millennium, how did it sort of progress? Did you keep the same friends?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the fact that after so long, I mean, you mentioned back to 1986 was your first involvement. How do you feel about still being labelled as a gang member?
I don't feel good.
Okay. And what sort of effect has that had on you?
Yeah, like if obviously if you get in trouble with the police and you go to court, it's mentioned. Okay. You come to prison, it's mentioned. You start a business, it's mentioned. That's what it is.
I understand as part of being labelled as a gang member that you've actually been shot 3 times. Once in the leg, once in the stomach, and one quite serious one, you've actually been shot in your head. Would you like to tell me a little bit about that?
Well, the first time I was shot was in 87. No fault of my own, but obviously I was shot in my stomach.
Okay.
Straight after it, well, momentarily after it, I was shot in my leg. A friend of mine was shot dead.
At the same time when you received your injuries?
No, I received my injuries while I was getting transferred to hospital via the car that are coming. My friend was shot dead.
Wow.
By the same gunman, yeah.
I know you work with quite a lot of young offenders in the community, and you get a sort of a first-hand insight into gangs of today. How do you feel that things have changed from sort of like when you was around to now?
Gangs of today, well, obviously they're different from my time. In my time, you're fighting for something. Today, they're fighting for nothing.
Okay.
I mean, as for the postcode, the only thing I know about postcode is obviously is a postman and they're posting letters. That's what I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but other than that, I don't know.
Can you see the problem getting worse? Can you, because I see people as young as 14, 15 years old acting sort of as a stereotypical gang member. I mean, it's getting much younger these days.
Yeah, obviously it's getting younger, but it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way.
Okay. After viewing the clips that I've shown you today of different groups of people and how they could quite easily be classed as gang members, but yet the word gang seems to just simply attach itself to the stereotypical gang member. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I don't feel good. Okay, it shouldn't be that way.
Okay. So has it changed your perception of the word gang? Has it opened your eyes to see how many different groups can now be labelled as a gang member?
No, because I've known about that for quite a bit of a time.
Okay.
But obviously, people choose when and when not to use that word, when it suits, to whom it suits.
Okay. Moving on in the future, I understand you do a lot of work campaigning against gang violence and the gang culture in Manchester. Would you like to tell me a little bit about that?
Well, what I'm doing is I'm trying to steer and direct the youth in a different direction.
Okay.
Away from the life that I had.
Okay.
Which it wasn't a good life. Well, when money's flowing, everything's nice. When you're with your company, everything's nice. But later on in life, when you come to prison, it's not nice. Mm-hmm. I mean, so I'm just showing the youth and that's not the way. I mean, you can make money, legal money, and live good. I mean, it's not like before I come to prison and everything like that, I've got my own business. I still had my own business. I still got my own business. You know what I mean? So I know about the illegal side of life. I know about the legal side of life. The legal side outweighs the illegal side. Mm. And that's the path I want them to trod, not the other one.
Lastly, do you have any sort of message or advice that you can give to anybody who may be watching, who maybe be part of a gang or who feels that the gang lifestyle is attractive? Do you have any messages that you'd like to give to them on how they can possibly get out of the gang culture and stuff?
Well, if someone wants to get out of a gang, you can do that easily. You just cut ties, move away, and stay true to yourself and your family. And those that want to try to get involved in this thing, what can I say? There's two things that happen in life that are sure. One is death, and the next is prison. So it's whichever one they want, isn't it?
Thanks once again for coming along. Appreciate what you've done. Very powerful interview you've given there. Appreciate you taking the time out and discussing things that are obviously quite private to yourself.
Yeah.
All the best for the future.
Well, I'm glad I could help any time.
So there you have it, a brief insight and history into the word gang, how it can be tagged to so many different people, but sticks to a few. The fact that people who get classed as gang members are finding it increasingly hard to shake it off. But when we look at the facts, are people really helping themselves? Some may have liked what they have seen. This may have opened a few minds. But my main message was this: if you want to make change, it starts and ends with you.